I'm Gina DuVernay, the Adult Services Manager for Gwinnett County Public Library. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. My colleague here, Amy Perry, is here, and we have information on future programs that we have coming up, so please grab a flyer on your way out. What else? We have our bookseller here. We have Anil from Bookmiser over here with the beautiful books that are there on the table for your per purchase, if you'd like to purchase that, because we'll be doing a book signing after the talk. And we also have Duluth Fine Arts League here. So I would like to ask Anna, if you don't mind, to come up and just tell them a little bit about it for those that are in Duluth and surrounding areas. Okay? Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
I'm with Duluth Fine Arts League. We've been around for 15 years. We just celebrated our 15-year anniversary a few months ago. And we were created as a nonprofit organization, created to support and engage people in the arts. So we have a meeting right here downtown Duluth every month, every third Wednesday. We got lots of information over there if you'd like to stop by and sign up for the newsletter, find out a little more about us. And also we got a big event coming up, Festival of Trees, which will be held at the train station, the train museum. So we're aiming for 70 trees this year. Last year we had about 45, so come and see us. Come visit us over there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. They were the perfect organization to sponsor tonight's talk, so they're the ones that are providing the refreshments that you have tonight. All right. I'm going to go ahead and read their bios, and then we'll get to the good stuff, okay? Okay, so Jay Lamar is one of the editors. She's a co-editor of the book. She's in the middle there. She is the director of special programs for the Office of the Provost and University Libraries at Auburn University. She serves directly with the Office of Undergraduate Studies on special lectures and the Common Reading Program, and with the Department of Archives and Special Collections in the Ralph B. Dragon Library.
It's hard.
For more than 2 decades, she was the director of the Carolyn Marshall Drawn Center for the Arts and Humanities, where she helped forge partnerships between the university and the community. She is co-editor of the Remembered Gate, Memoirs by Alabama Writers. Jacqueline Allen Trimble, on the end there, lives and writes in Montgomery, Alabama. She is a National Endowment for the Arts Creative Writing Fellow, Cave Con Fellow, and Alabama State Council on the Arts Literary Fellow. American Happiness, her debut collection, won the Balconies, I can't read people. Poetry Prize. Yeah. Her work has appeared in various anthologies and journals, including Poetry Magazine, the Louisville Review, the Rumpus, and Poet Lore. She is a professor of English and chairs the Department of Languages and Literatures at Alabama State University. Then lastly, Jeannie Thompson, sitting here on the end in the beautiful yellow shirt, is a poet and essayist and the author of such titles as The Myth of Water, Poems from the Life of Helen Keller, and The Seasons Bear Us, among others. In 1993, Jeannie founded the Alabama Writers Forum, a partnership program of the Alabama State Council of the Arts. Jeannie retired as executive director in 2023. The following year, she received the Albert B. Head Legacy Award for her work as a literary arts advocate and award-winning poet. Jenny has been a poet faculty member in the, now this one you're going to, Naslund Man. It doesn't really look like that, but Graduate School of Writing at Spalding University since 2002. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Gina, so much for that introduction. We try to throw in a few difficult words just to make sure that they're on their toes, you know, the introducers, and it's wonderful to be here. And I want to thank the staff and the bookseller, love you, and the Arts Guild, and I think it's wonderful to be. This is my first trip to Duluth, but I think I'm going to move here. This library and this beautiful area behind us with just so much going on. It's wonderful. We stopped and asked directions 3 times coming from the hotel. Just directionally challenged, maybe. And everybody was so nice, and one person did everything but walk us here. So we were good. So this is such a great place, and it's a thrill to be here and a thrill to be talking about Old Enough. I'm going to read a little bit from the introduction, just sort of to set up how the book came to be and a little bit of the background, and then we'll do some readings, and then Jackie's going to moderate some discussion. And we'll want your questions, too. So, okay. Can you hear me? Is this okay? Okay, great. I'm going to start with a quote. Old age was growing inside me. It kept catching my eye from the depths of the mirror. I was paralyzed sometimes as I saw it making its way toward me so steadily when nothing inside me was ready for it. This is a quote by Simone de Beauvoir from her 3rd autobiography, Force of Circumstance, which she published when she was 55. I was in my early 60s when I first read these words, and they made me sort of sit back hard in my chair. I was feeling my age, and I recognized everything about them. The sense of dread, the approach of a fate that could not be escaped, the horror that it was carried inside me, growing not to be born, but to take over my body. It was not what I expected to feel. If, when I was in my 40s or early 50s, someone had asked me what I thought about aging, I would have said, not only do I not fear it, I intend to welcome it. I will be open to what it can teach me. I will be serene. I will do yoga. I will become my best self. In short, I was not the least bit prepared, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, for the reality of getting older. Something was happening, ready or not, and it wasn't pretty. I found myself thinking, who is this person, and why is she taking over my body? In 1970, in her 60s, Beauvoir published The Coming of Age, and I'm sure many of you know it. It's a comprehensive study of aging across culture, race, and history. Her synthesis of disciplines and probing inquiry provoked discussion, call to action, and a new field of study called gerontology then. The book was important in its content, but also perhaps in its very existence. For in it, Beauvoir turns her dread to work. She uses a lifetime of knowledge and her powerful intellect to address fear and ignorance about age and aging and to instigate change. Her message to me, the face may fall, but the mind persists. And this matters, since one of the most disorienting aspects of female aging is that while we may feel ourselves to be alive, alert, ripe with experience and wisdom, the world can find us, well, barely there. The silence is painful and it's embarrassing. Is it our fault somehow? Then after shame comes anger, which is motivating in the short run. Once it burns off, though, you'll want to know what to do with the rest of your life. The answer for me was this collection of essays, Old Enough, Southern Women Artists and Writers on Creativity and Aging. Some of the pieces in it are meditations, some are coming to terms with new, maybe diminished or confining circumstances. Some are reflection on how we got here, others testimonies to perseverance or declarations of agency. The subject that knits them together and makes a through line is creativity, and how the need for it, the pursuit of it, the practice of it, shapes and informs our lives all the way to the end. The contributors are writers, painters, sculptors, a quilter, a photographer, a singer-songwriter. They're gay, straight, unmarried, partnered, widowed, Black, white, Latinx, retired, and working. They're artists and writers who are or have been educators, nurses, ministers, physical therapists and psychotherapists, restaurant owners, and nonprofit managers. They all come from or have spent significant periods of their life in the South. As this book was going to press, they ranged in age from 57 to 87. If you add all of their ages together, they have more than 1,000 years of life experience, which is a ridiculous number, but somehow sort of meaningful too. And in their essays, they show us, in Beauvoir's words, how to go on pursuing the ends that give our meaning, our existence a meaning. We began this book maybe out of frustration, but also with a great sense of adventure, of being explorers entering a territory both new to us and generally undocumented, or at least not well represented by the place names that usually mark where we are in our lives. Girlhood, young motherhood, menopause. For the most part, we're beyond all three. And on this side, we now look to our authentic selves, composed of the artists we may first have known ourselves to be in our youth and the people we have become through experience and time. We do not seek to name this age, to choose crone or hag or elder, senior, mature adult. To do so is to risk adopting a term that will define us without knowing us. In fact, this book is about the limitations of names, about defying prescribed identities and roles, capacities and relevance, based on others' ideas of who we are, what we can do, and what we have to offer. We are individual persons with vast experience and unique perspectives. We are driven to create, to be noisy, to investigate, to stay committed to the processes that work, and to try to understand. Thank you.
Me? I'm going to stand up. I'm going to stand. Okay. Sorry. I can project a lot better. So I'm Jeannie Thompson, and I've spent a long time promoting writers and writing in Alabama through the Alabama Writers Forum. One of the things that we did a lot was to bring writers to audiences. And so now I'm so happy to get to be presented to an audience instead of having to develop the audience. But no, I loved it. It was a passion that I had, and I was able to do my own writing at the same time. Jay and the other co-editors made this fabulous opportunity for some of us to write about aging and creativity together. And I do hope that you will avail yourselves of the book, because it's everybody's unique in this, and you'll hear. So you're going to hear two tonight, and so I'll just jump right in. The name of this one is The Generous Becoming. The target is a little sub-part here. For the first time in 70 years, I'm on a Greek island in the Aegean Sea. It is at the onset of summer, and I'm taking part in a 3-week creative writing workshop on the Cycladic island of Seriphos. At a point in my life when I really should not be spending thousands to run away, I have decided to perch on a rocky island and write like my life depends on it. It feels that imperative. Day 6 on the island. Outside, the early summer wind on Seriphos is howling, knocking the wooden shutters of our little white and blue apartments, whipping the tall bamboo behind my back porch so that it leans and sways with abandon. And this fly friend has come to be with me. Surrounding us, like Aeolus himself, god of the wind, who wants attention, damn it. When I open the computer to look for notes, I find a poem called The Target, written and abandoned, one of those poems that did not fit in anywhere, or so I thought. I read it and remember who I was then, why it happened. Poetry often takes me back in time within the present moment. I'm 2 places at once. I see flaws in the line breaks, stanza composition. I start adjusting. After 15 minutes of that, I feel a little better. When I revise a poem, and I'm sure all of you who write can relate here, when I revise a poem, I can forget where I am in time as I take the lines from one place to another toward a better piece of writing, I hope. I feel sure that other artists experience this absence of time passing, of being fully present in the moment, which may be the ideal state for creative work. Sadly, it is as fleeting as a wisp of smoke. If I achieve this, I am only briefly freed from time, but also from age. Not an older woman or a younger woman or a suburban woman. Simply, that was a political joke.
Yes.
Simply, you can laugh.
I can't laugh.
Yeah, simply a woman writing, searching for the most accurate expression of what she has to say. So here's the target. This is just a simple, odd little poem, but here it is, the target. The young man takes up his bow, plants his feet, as he might center himself to blow his trumpet. But this is not an orchestra. He conducts himself, maestro, to a private rhythm. Beyond him, bull's-eye targets are spaced in gradations of depth from left to right. He pulls the metal arrow from its quiver, sights, sets, sights, fingers laced through the arrow's fletching. His face in shadow, his youth coolly lit under the pavilion. The targets, trees, and hill bathed in sunlight. He draws. The mechanical whine of the arrow's taut release surprises me each time I hit replay. I do not see the arrow hit the target. He walks calmly out of the frame. Mm-hmm. In reading this poem again and immediately starting to revise it, I was taken back in time on several levels. Memory, a sense of myself then versus now, and an awareness of moving through time at a different pace brought on by the act of revision. I know this process from years of writing as far back as age 14, when I knew nothing about craft, but still had an instinct to revise, to change a few words or cross something out. It is well known that the arts improve health. Writing classes are proliferating everywhere, especially in settings such as trauma units, cancer wards for children, veterans rehabilitation programs, memory care centers, and most vitally, in institutions where humans are confined by courts. I think poetry's innate power to heal, to revise, to reconstruct has barely been explored, though recently it has gotten some media attention as our world has grown more violent and incomprehensible. Someone asked, what if everyone in the world stopped for 1 hour a day at the same time to write a poem about themselves in the world? What might this do for our politics? It could change the world. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. So I just want to get a special shout out to my peeps, including my sister and my niece, my cousin, my friends of 30, 40, 50, 100 years, my favorite editor. It's just so many of you. And I just want to thank you, because if I lived in Atlanta, I would be in jail because of the traffic and the road rage. Like, I don't know how y'all do it, but y'all must all be saints. So we thank you for coming out. 3 things you need to know. I'm going to read a little excerpt of the essay that I wrote for this volume. Thank you, Jay Lamar. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It started, as much of my writing starts, as a Facebook rant. Yeah, because that's how I spend my time. And it's called I Have Seen the Promised Land and It Is Me. So you need to know 3 things. 1, I rolled out of the womb a writer, and all I had to do was wait to learn to read. And as soon as I learned to read, I went home and wrote my autobiography. It was a page long. It was a paragraph long. The second thing you got to understand is that I had every intention of being a poet. I went to college. I was going to be a poet. But then life happened. Life started lifing. And I ended up doing something very practical, like getting a PhD in English. Yeah, that's a joke, right? Okay, and the third thing is, it's my husband, my lovely husband, who said to me when I was 50 years old, "You're not happy, you're not writing." And I thought he was crazy, because we had a child in middle school, and I said, "We late for the bell. I don't have time to think about this." But of course, and I hate this, he was right. So I'm going to read a little bit of this. And it has to do with, I was going to be a writer, and I was going to win the Pulitzer Prize and the National Book Award, and I was going to write 10 books, and I was going to do all this stuff, and none of that happened. And I ended up publishing my first book when I was 55 years old. So that was not a late start. All right. How many times had I chastised myself for not having become a writer earlier, or at least a creative, as if I weren't teaching and parenting and living my days heaped with tasks as fast as I possibly could, sewing elf costumes for the kindergarten class, cooking thousands of cupcakes for the school bake sale, writing plays for Sunday school, endless days of making something out of nothing, though I was broke and tired and depleted. Wasn't I living a life of constant creativity? Don't most of us? And yet, I could not disabuse myself of the thought that almost 4 decades of college teaching college students, coupled with making this life, was somehow not evidence of the right kind of creative work. I often felt ashamed, as if I had failed, because I wasn't well established, because I didn't have a stack of books and or prizes so high I couldn't see over them. But should I? Or who says? Or mind your business and stay out of mine. I am not going to lie. Rearranging my thinking about creativity has been a chore. It can be intimidating to walk into bookstores, proverbial hat in hand, and ask for readings or convince them that they should carry my book. And it is humbling to ask people I could have given birth to for reviews and blurbs. And certainly disconcerting to encounter the surprise on people's faces when they see me with the expectations I will be writing about flowers or spending time at the condo by the beach, then hear my poems and think, who is this? As one very well-established poet said to me, you look homey, but the poetry that comes out of you is anything but that. She was not the first to offer this opinion. I get it. I get it. The edgiest thing in my closet even now is a pair of 4-inch Christian Louboutin stilettos, which I don't wear because they hurt my feet. My sister calls them couch-sitting shoes. And I am not willing to be uncomfortable. Discomfiture is the job of poetry, my poetry, because no one should judge a book by its sensible shoes. This disconnect between who I look to be and who I am is a thing with me. When I was in my early 30s, married, settled, 2 small babies at home, I walked into the corner store to buy some pork chops. The young butcher, maybe 19 or so, came out of the back in his white butcher's apron, leaned against the door frame behind the meat case, toothpick hanging from his lip, and looked me up and down, down and up. I looked at him. He smiled. I think he was missing a tooth. He said, you look like a girl who knows what to do with some collard greens. This line was meant to be a come on. This man had checked me out and found me to be a nice, homey girl, somebody who could cook him up a proper meal and probably rub his feet without complaint to assuage his long day of being a butcher. I said nothing to him, just got my chops and went about my business as he watched me walk away. He didn't know I was a poet, and that one day he would end up wriggling under my gaze in a poem called Possible Responses to the 19-year-old butcher at the corner store in my neighborhood who said, you look like a girl who knows what to do with some collard greens. Which ends with the line, boy, you ain't ready for my collard greens. Not nearly. This is a story about a former student. I'm going to call him Buster, since I hold the power and can name him as I please. I took some of my majors to the inauguration of Montgomery's first black mayor, a momentous occasion given the city's history. As we stood there chatting, waiting for the program to begin, Buster walked toward me. I thought he was coming to share a few words about the significance of the day with the students or just speak out of courtesy to his former professor. Instead, he said, "Good morning, Grandma," and moved on to chat with somebody else. I was stunned, and then angry. This man didn't know me except as his professor. At the time, I was in my 50s. Aside from the fact that he was older than my oldest child, making the probability of my being his grandma very slim, I was appalled by the disrespectful intimacy of the salutation. Would he have called a male professor grandpa? I uttered a very late, "My name is Dr. Trimble," to his back as he moved on to what were, in his mind certainly, more important people and matters. His words, startling in the moment, were just a few more in a long line of utterances and actions that diminish and dismiss older women academics and artists. I do not look 20 anymore, or 30 or 40. I look my age, meaning to many I have outlived my female usefulness, meaning I can no longer reproduce. Now that I was no longer his professor, the former student returned me to the role of aging woman, who could then be dismissed with grandma, as in, just go sit on the porch, grandma, and watch the young play. The culture says, we don't need you. So can you please don your cloak of invisibility and silence so we don't have to deal with your unsightly wrinkles or your irrelevant observations? Not this woman. As I have gotten older, I have gotten more creative. All the energy I once used for nurturing of others, faculty, students, children, I now use to nurture my ideas and craft. This notion has nothing to do with whether women choose to have children or not, or be cat ladies. It's about what they are expected to be doing by a society suspicious of female activity outside of the domestic sphere. I don't have to be silent. I am not an ingenue, sweet and demure, nor a young faculty woman being good for tenure and promotion. I am a teller of truth, a witch, an oracle. If I claim my cloak of invisibility, it will be a superpower. Who will see me coming, looking all homey until they feel the kick of my comfortable stiletto hit their gut? That former student had best be careful not to stand too close. He has no idea the grandma he was talking about is on fire with creativity. So we're going to have a little conversation, and we want you to join in. I'm going to ask some questions.
Are they fiery questions?
I know,
Yes,
fiery
they're
questions.
fiery questions. Okay, so Jeannie, you wrote about, in part, your time in Seraphos.
Yeah.
And so tell me about why you were inspired to write about that particular moment. You have this amazing, if y'all don't know, Jeannie Thompson is an amazing poet, having published 5 volumes of poetry.
Well, 7 or 8.
7 or 8. And other things. So why that particular thing?
For the book?
For the book.
Okay. So the assignment for the book from the editors was to talk about creativity and aging. And so I took it pretty seriously, but I couldn't really figure out, I could talk about creativity forever, but the talking about the aging part was kind of, it was a little bit hard to get to. So to answer your question, I'm kind of coming around to it. I wanted to write about how I had to go all the way around the world to get still enough and quiet enough and away from things enough to write. And then when I got there, I opened up my computer, and here's a poem I've already written that I just sort of abandoned because I didn't think it fit in with anything. And so the point is that creativity occurs in time when it's going to occur. That's kind of a woo-woo answer, but what was the rest of the question?
No, I just said
Why
why
I picked
that
that.
particular
Well,
moment.
okay, so I picked it. I wanted to write about being there, and I've always found that I can do a lot better if I can go away from, you know, my home place or my job or whatever, and be in a place where there's not distractions of the everyday. There are lots of distractions. There were a lot of distractions there, but yeah, and
No,
I'm not answering that very
no,
well.
no, I
I'm
think you
sorry, but
answered it.
that's why I wrote about it
I
there.
think you answered it perfectly, because I think that one of the things that sort of runs as a thread is the opportunity and space for creativity, which women often do not have.
Right,
Because
right.
we're always taking care of somebody else. You know, whether it's as the leader of an organization or teacher or
Right, right.
mother or wife or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
So I think that's the perfect answer.
Yeah. And also, I was on deadline when I was in Seraphos.
That's right.
Okay, and so like I got to sit down, I got to do this. I have to do this. And that was really good. I like to write on deadline. So that was part of it. Plus it had, later on in the essay, I write about some other things that were there. But I have to say that I don't necessarily connect aging and creativity in some way. I mean, it's not like when I sit down to write a poem, I think about aging or whatever. I don't. But for me, creativity, which is why I read this part, is about the process of being able to look at it again and revise it and reshape it and remold it and throw it back down. And so that is what keeps you alive, and that's what keeps you vital. Therefore, that's like a, it's like a mitigation against aging.
Yeah.
So it's a creativity is an unexpected shield against aging, something like that.
No, I think that's.
Yeah.
So Jay, you talked a little bit in your introduction about what led to this book. And I want you to talk a little bit more about that, because, we've had some other conversations in this idea of women becoming invisible as we age. And you have done a lot of amazing things also in your career. So I want you to talk a little bit about this sort of fight and some choices that you made in the book to fight this idea of invisibility for women, but also kind of tell us a little bit also about the process, because this book has 2 main editors and then some sort of supplemental editors and a photographer. Right. That's 5 women. Yeah. Did I say that out loud? Right. But that's 5 women working on this project.
We didn't plan it that way, but that's how it came to be. But first about invisibility, and I think that one of the things, and this is will not come as a surprise to anybody, that we, through the culture, through the media, most of what we get about aging, especially female aging, is how not to age, or how not to look like it,
anti-aging,
or to deny it, to ignore it, to transcend it in some way. And I think that when you're in the workforce, and for me personally, there was a moment when I'd finished one job and I was looking for the next, and I had lunch with this banker who was in his 80s, and he said, and I was in my late 50s, and he said, the best is yet to come. I didn't really earn my first million until I was 66 or something. And I was like, that is not going to be mine, I guarantee. But I thought, wow, you get these things done, and you get to a stage where you really can just turn your heart and mind to doing something that, and I think we have been lucky, because we have always worked with things that have mattered to us, and connecting with communities and libraries and the arts and schools, and so much that's been very rich. But then when you turn to something that you can really just give yourself to, not worry about what it's going to cost, what you have to make, and then there was nothing there, and it was not obvious, and I don't think that would have happened to a man in the same situation. And I hear it from women a lot, that you just all of a sudden you're in your 60s, and it's just, you just don't look viable anymore, and that is something that, in a way, it's a superficial thing, but it's a very painful thing too. And if you can turn inward and find out who you are and what matters to you, and that's really what the book was about, is how this is ridiculous. Just we cannot be judged by these standards, or let the reflection of the world inhibit or limit who we can be. And so that's what that was. But so all this started just as COVID was starting. It was such a great time. And so I have a group of women that I meet with, and who turned out to be the co-editors. One is a former poet laureate of Alabama, and the other was an Alabama Public Television producer and writer, and the other one was a journalist and writer, and my sister. And so we began to meet by Zoom, and as COVID ramped up, and just to talk about this and say, what is this, and what are we doing? Do we, where do we go from here? What is happening? And we met often by Zoom while cooking supper, and there were dogs and cats and children and grandchildren and martinis sometimes, and which sort of greased the wheels. But anyway, it kind of began to get traction, and the more women we talked to, the more people had a lot to say about this. And through the great, just brilliant idea that Gail Andrews, who's the former director emerita of the Birmingham Museum of Art, she said, you know, it would be nice, it's going to be great to hear, but what about seeing you? Because that is one of the things to make us visible, to make our women our age visible. And so she connected us with Carolyn Shearer, who is an award-winning photographer based in Birmingham, who has work all over. And she did not glamour shots, but what she called environmental shots. She wanted to take portraits of all of the contributors, where they live, where they work, or in places that were meaningful to them. And so there are 21 women in the book, and each one has a portrait by Carolyn. And they've been recently at the Montgomery Museum of Art, an exhibition of selected portraits. But it really is a powerful thing to look and see. And the portraits are so forthright, they're so honest, and I think adds a dimension to the book that has been really important to us to see ourselves and then to be seen.
So I'm going to ask you guys one more question. I'd like for both of you to answer it, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience for questions. So the response to the book has been overwhelming. You know, it's just like people, and what has surprised me most is the number of men who have written and said, like the one guy who wrote and said, I had to wait for my wife to finish it, but then I got to read it and I read it and it was so good. It was so good. And so are you surprised by the response, or what has surprised you, if anything, about the response to it?
Well, I've never participated in anything like this. I've been in poetry anthologies. I've been in magazines with a lot of different writing in them, but I've never been in an anthology where everybody had an assignment that was similar. Jay and I did edit The Remembered Gate together, which was Alabama writers writing about why being from Alabama influenced them. But even that was not quite the same. And it's kind of it's kind of like a sorority or a sisterhood or something. I mean, I don't come out of a culture of that. I've always been a loner in that way, but I'm really happy to be in this. I'm really happy, and I've loved getting to know some of these people. And I just want to say that I was going to put in the plug for Yvonne, unless you want to do it.
Yeah.
One of the most exciting things, Yvonne Wells, who is the quilter in here, where's her picture? Isn't she in the back?
She's toward the back.
Yvonne Wells is she does story quilts. I'm not going to be able to find it right fast, but anyway, I've actually been overseas with her, with some other Alabama artists with her story quilts, and she's just her collected documentation of these quilts is coming out from the University of Alabama Press, and she's just gotten this huge award.
94.
And
95.
she's just been awarded a Joan Mitchell Foundation fellowship of $60,000.
And she's
88.
She's 88.
Yeah.
And anyway,
88.
Yeah.
and so we get to be a part of celebrating that with her. You know, that was just announced like this week.
Right.
Her book was announced. We were in Tuscaloosa at a reading in a bookstore, and the University of Alabama Press came in and said, here's your book, and sort of put it in her lap. I was like, whoa, why would you do it to her like this, you know? But she just held it to her breast like a baby. It was so amazing. So to get to be a part of other people's joy and creativity and all is really wonderful. But I think there's no reason why there couldn't be many more books like this, you know? And you could do, I've talked with a friend of mine who's a photographer about flipping it and having, a man's version of this. But there are lots of ways that this type of book could be, sorry, I'm running out of gas.
No, that's okay.
Art shows, exhibitions, performances,
Workshops.
poetry. I mean, we have festivals, we've got festivals are very expensive to put on. But I just think it's, something that could be replicated.
So Jay, what has surprised you?
I think that the response has been so great. And it is men, women, people of all ages, because I think it speaks to us no matter really what age we are. There are always these things that we have to think about who we are, what we want to do, and how we want to live our best lives, our full lives, and be, alive to ourselves. But there is sort of a moment now, I think, and if you look at the demographics, and this was part of our, pitch to the publisher, was like, there are a lot of us. There are a lot of us, yeah.
There's a big audience
And there's
here.
a big bubble of
Yeah.
us, yes. So I think there are a lot of people who want to know, we are in this together, and it is part of a community. And a lot of times, I think one of the other things about getting older and retiring is you leave your workplace, you leave your colleagues, your children are grown, they're gone, you have the cat maybe, or maybe 4 or 5, or, but you don't have a ready-made community. You're not at the sandbox, you're not in PTA, you're not going to work every day. And so you have to really be deliberate, because part of taking care of yourself, but also being part of a community and having friends and people who will talk to you and want to talk to you, who are where you are, or who are going to be where you are, or have been where you are. And so it's all along a spectrum. And that's something that I think we have to, it's worth being deliberate about, to make sure that you see yourself on a spectrum, you're engaged in a spectrum. And so those are, The one thing that is surprising is there's very little sex in here. And there's some things that are missing in the book. And I'm like, and no 2 essays, everybody came back with a different response and a different approach. It's astonishing. And I think if we'd done 21 more, we would have 21 different stories. But people don't talk about their children that much, except, we had them. And, and no sex. And so I don't know, maybe volume 2 is the rest of the story.
Okay.
So, anyway.
All right, so I'd like to open it up for questions. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say thank you all for being here. This has just been
You're
very
welcome.
inspiring.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's
Yes, ma'am.
She's got a chip.
Especially,
Oh,
I'm sorry. As we age, as we all know, lots of things change. What impact do you think creativity has on both your mental health as well as your physical?
So for me, creativity is the thing that helps me survive. I would not have survived most of the things that happened to me in my life without creativity, without the ability to write about it, the poetry. And so it's everything, which is what my husband realized long before I did. So yeah, it's all, it's all. And I think there's a reason that Yvonne Wells is 88 and still going strong, right?
I think it is it's the reason to get up in the morning. It's the reason to understand why you do. It's the, or the way that you can. And a lot of the women, and I feel this way too, that didn't come to their full creative selves to be able to devote themselves to it until later in life. And to see we had many, many models, not just Simone, but Anne Porter, who's a poet who didn't publish her first book until she was 83. And
Annie Proulx, I think Annie Proulx.
Yeah, and there are just many, many examples of that where you kind of come into your own, and it makes you're more engaged. You think, you dive deeply. I think those are the things that keep us alive.
And that's what I was trying to say in my essay, is that it mitigates, creativity. Time moves differently. Time moves differently. It can go forward, backward, in a circle, up and down. And aging is, marching along on a timeline. So, but there's lots and lots of health programs in hospitals and stuff now, I'm sorry, art programs.
Yes.
So there's a lot of research about it. It's out, it's good for you.
It's good for you.
You're welcome.
Adrienne.
I have 2 questions, maybe one of you can take each one.
Okay.
The first question is this cloak of invisibility phenomena, is that like a first world or Western society thing? Is it more prevalent? And if so, have you perhaps found cultures in other places that have a different perspective towards aging women? So that's the first question. And then the second question is, Do you think that the lessons that we're learning as older women, are they things that the younger women just have to learn on their own, or are there things that we can actually pass down to them to help them when they get to that process?
I think that yes, to answer your first question, because I think American culture is a very youth-oriented culture. And, you know, it's all about what you can lift and Botox away and not sort of see the beauty of aging, you know? The joke that I have with Joseph is that everybody in America hits a certain age and then everybody looks like a cat because they go to the same surgeon and it's like, that does not look like anything found in nature. Like, please stop doing that. Please stop doing that. I would rather see your natural aging face, which can be very beautiful, which is very beautiful in its own way. And as to my opinion about the passing down is I think that, I have a daughter and we talk a lot. And I think it is something that you can pass down in the way you socialize your daughter to think about herself, So I have learned some ways of thinking about myself that are quite different, perhaps, than, what has been the notions that have been pushed at me. But I have tried very hard not to socialize my daughter to think about herself and the sources of her power in that same way.
I would only add that I think we can be good examples, and we can also nurture the creativity in the younger women and people, just in general. And that's, they will not know the questions to ask. I don't think I did until you and that's an evolving thing. But if you have the tools and the support, then that's where you can make the most of, it'll help you find the answers and help you endure and thrive.
Yeah.
I haven't traveled real widely, but I have traveled some in Italy. And in Italy, the young men, like the young man that I wrote the poem about, are very deferential to. This is a guy who I met because of some music. And there was nothing, untoward about this. He took me all around Pietrasanta, then he took me to his house and showed me his cat and his trumpets and all this kind of stuff. That's how young men treat their aunties or whatever. And it's very, I'm sure there's other stuff that happens sometimes. But mainly he was just being very deferential and nice to me. And, but he sent me this strange this little video of himself shooting at the target to show me about archery, because I didn't know why do you like archery? You're this great trumpet player, but he likes archery too. So I think Italy, I think in Europe you would find more of that. I haven't traveled in other places, but I think in America we, like Jay said, we're very youth oriented, and I think we do need to, stand up and say things. I don't have a daughter, I have a son. I have a young woman who works with me as my assistant, and I try to, help her understand things. But I don't know how we can do a lot more than what we're trying to do. Old enough. You just have to, I don't know. That's not a very good answer. I'm sorry, but go to Italy.
Yes.
Question. It seems to me, just in this bit of the conversation, that a lot of it seems to be about how we're perceived by men or boys. And I'm very inspired by listening to all of you all, and I'm from a very creative family, so I had a lot of great role models, and even though I've been through seasons in my life that were very busy, creativity came out of me in some way or another. But I know that's not true for a lot of women. And if I was speaking with them, well, everybody who knows me will say, "Oh, you're so creative." Well, and I said, "Well, so are you." They would say, "No, I'm not creative." And what about not just younger generations, but our peers and other women who have never even considered creativity, or that they might have creativity within them
Yeah.
and don't know how to make that jump.
Right.
I think it's what we value in our culture. What do we value in our culture? You know? Do we value the arts? And obviously Duluth does. You know, you have an art league, you've got this great library, you've got a gathering of people. But I think that's part of it.
I think,
you know?
I think people have a very limited notion of what creativity is.
That's exactly right.
And I think
Right.
that's
Yeah.
the problem, is that they are being creative every day.
Right.
And, you know, even just in
Right,
the things they're figuring
right.
out in their lives.
Yes.
But they have not stopped to think about how creative they're being. Or they have not, yes, they have not given themselves permission to call themselves creative. And so I think maybe to start with a conversation about how they're creative, like what, you know, that those flyers you made for the PTA bake sale, or whatever it is, you know,
Or the
I don't know what it
cookies,
is, or the
yeah,
cookies,
Yeah.
and you set a beautiful table, or your garden. We forget that, you know, growing things is a creative act. It's so much creativity. Living is a creative act.
Does that answer some?
And I want to say it's not just how we're perceived by men.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in some ways that is very important. And I've heard, you know, one woman in the book said, "I'm just not cute anymore," and you know, and that's you know, but there's more. You know, she said that, now I'm over that. You know, so it's not just, you know, but it's not just, it's how we perceive ourselves, and I think how the larger culture does too, which is
Some women, I think, intentionally hold back.
right. And we have been doing several of these, and so many people, men and women, say, I really want to get started on something that I've wanted to do for a long time.
write.
You know,
Yeah.
and to write, and people have cried, and it was, you know, wanted to know where do we go? What do we read? What do we, you know, how do we find out about this? And there are so many, I think there are lots of avenues for that, and to find it out and to give ourselves permission to pursue it is key.
I was thinking about that it's the perfection thing.
Yes.
It's perfectionists. People think,
Oh, I think so,
well, I can't
yeah.
possibly do that because I'll probably fail at it.
Yes.
But the point is that you just do it, and then you can learn, and you might learn you don't like it.
Right.
And you can do something else. Like,
Yes.
you know, I probably could paint if I wanted to, but, you know,
Yeah.
if I started, I might.
No
but
knitting.
I'm not, you
No
know.
knitting. Yes, right.
But that's how it is. It's like, you know, I have a particular family issue with painting, but, you know, I would like to be able to do something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things I write about in my essay is about disabusing myself of the notion of becoming an expert.
Yeah.
Like, who decided that something I enjoy doing, I had to reach a certain status to do it. Like, if you like to,
Just enjoy it.
right, you can't just enjoy it. And who cares? Paint if you want to paint, dance if you want to dance. You know, I apparently break dance at the Olympics if you want to break dance. You know, like, hey,
Australia gave it her all.
she gave it her all.
She did. Yeah. Yeah. On that note, okay.
I want to thank you. Let's give a round of
No,
Thank y'all.
Great to see you.
I will say this. One thing people can do is read old enough.
Right.
You
Right.
can do that.
And write
But
your
Could I
own.
add one thing?
That's right, sure.
This book was not 24 hours out, and Gina was the first person who messaged me on Facebook about coming.
I didn't know
the
that, Jen.
first person who said acknowledged that we had a book, and so
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Said we'll do anything for you.
That's
just
the
anything.
infamous Joseph back there. But at any rate, Jackie's husband. But thank you, Jay. Yeah, it caught my eye,
Yeah.
and I feel old enough, so I thought, why not, right? But another thing, I will do a shameless plug for your local library. We have all kinds of creative things, and it's all free, right? So if you just
Right.
want to try your hand at knitting or script writing or photography, just, you know, go to the website. We're here for you. Okay. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
3D printers. You want to do a podcast? We got you. So you want to hear wonderful talks, author talks.
That's
library,
great.
right?
That's great. That's
You're
great.
here, so you people know. So now you have to spread the word.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to eat the popcorn because there's a lot of it, right? So go back there, find out more about Duluth Fine Arts. Please check out Anil here at Book Miser. There, check out our flyer for upcoming talks, and we'll get ready for the book signing. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you. Okay, where do you want us to sit?